when your environment is the complete opposite? Ah, that is an excellent question. Okay, let me throw this up here. Okay, so Big Smile asks, we had previously been talking about people being born into certain environments, certain families, certain religious tradition, that sort of thing. And so the question is, if you believe that Jesus holds the key to heaven, but if you're born in a different area, so say a non-Christian area, non-Christian family, could you have come to the same conclusions when your environment is the complete opposite? This is it's an excellent question, and the answer is yes, and the answer is yes because we have a term for this. We call it general revelation. Jesus is a specific or special revelation, meaning specific. General revelation is knowledge of God has been made throughout the world just through creation itself. So, for example, an astronomer can look up into the sky, and obviously there's going to be different astronomers with different conclusions about the sky, but they can look up into the sky and say, wow, I see all of this, and I do believe that there is a God that created everything here. It is too much for it to be an accident, that sort of thing. It's too much. Or a biologist looks at the intricacies of a human body and says, wow, this has design written all over it, or whatever you might say. Now, obviously, not all of them will. Obviously, there's going to be difference of opinion and different disagreements and all those sorts of things. But there's going to be some who are going to come to that conclusion, and that would be independent of going to a church and saying that. What that does is that then gets them on a pathway to where they will find Jesus in the answer to their seeking out a question. So they say, there must be a God because I see all of this. Therefore, let me go and find out and seek out about God. And so, without knowledge specifically of Jesus, you don't have salvation. But Jesus has basically given the breadcrumbs throughout all of creation that everyone, in fact, the book of Romans chapter 1 talks about this, that the entire world has been made aware of God through his creation, so that no one has an excuse. And so ultimately that does mean that by the end of things, either people who want to know, they can find out. And then there's some really interesting stories that come along with that. Stories like real life stories. I have a friend, and this is a true story, but you may or may not, I've told it before, but you may or may not believe it to be true. I didn't witness it firsthand, so there you go. But I have a friend who's a missionary. And this missionary decided, I've told this before, some of you might remember it, but this missionary decided he wanted to go to a tribe that has never been reached by any outsiders whatsoever. So they've never seen a white-skinned man. He and his wife, they go out to this tribe in Indonesia. Unreached tribe, totally unreached. In fact, the other tribes nearby, they said, don't go, they're a dangerous tribe, they're going to kill anyone who's out from an outside. But he says, no, we want to go. And they go out there, and they meet the tribe. They're not in danger, that sort of thing. Sorry, I'm not able to read and tell the story and play the game at the same time. So you're gonna have to listen to the story, then I'll read and catch up. But they do. They go there, and they find out that this tribe is welcoming them. All right, they've never met them. This tribe has never met outsiders, but the tribe welcomes them. And they spend over a year there learning the very basics of the language, because there's no written language. I mean, this is total tribal everything, all right? And so they learn the language enough to find out why these people who are historically aggressive towards outsiders are welcoming and friendly. And they basically find out that this tribe, their parents, like the generation, the older generation, the current generation, and the younger generation, they have all been having dreams. This is wild, okay? This is wild. You don't have to believe it. That's okay. I'm telling you what a person that I believe has credibility has told me. He's written a book on it. And so they've all been having these dreams saying the same thing. That one day, a man with pale skin will arrive, and he'll have the most important message to tell you that you've ever heard. You need to listen to him. And they've been having these dreams for years. And here he is. He just shows up, and they say, we know you're the guy. We want to help you learn our language so that you can tell us whatever this message is that we've been having dreams about. And so this is just one-time example of something that is a unique case that you can't expect to happen all the time, but this was what his story is. Again, you might not say that that's credible. I happen to know the guy. But his story is they listened and they all believed in Jesus. And so that was they were in an environment that had no connection to Jesus, and yet through the through God wanting them to be able to hear this message, they all were told ahead of time you need to listen. And again, that's a anecdote of an event, not the norm. But it is interesting. That's how just that there are times where people, have no contact. There's other times where people are simply led on a journey. Like, you're always questioning things. Why is it this way? And you're just kind of wondering. Maybe it shouldn't always be this way. And so, you're led on this just journey to perhaps find the answers, and you end up on a pathway to learn about Jesus. Those sorts of things. That's how that problem of being raised in an environment that doesn't have the information can be overcome. And I might have been able to explain it better if I wasn't trying to multitask. I hope that's sufficient. I hope that helps. Falamder, you said this a while ago. No one has any excuse. Sounds very negative. You're right. It sounds that way. That's. Here's the thing. That particular passage where it's talking about not having an excuse is also talking about God gave you this information so that you can avoid, through belief, you can avoid judgment, which is coming for anyone who chooses not to believe. And so, when they're facing that judgment and they have made the conscious choice to not believe, which, everyone has made a conscious choice on how they want to respond to this sort of thing. When they're facing that judgment, there is no excuse. And that is a negative sense, but that is a self-inflicted thing. I know that doesn't sound pleasant, but that would be the reality of the Bible is yes, God is love, but if we're here saying, I don't want to be with God, there is only one other place to go. It's not that God wants to send us to hell, it's that we don't want to be in heaven. And so he sits at the judgment seat and says, okay, what is it that you decided on? And that's the ultimately thing. It's not whether or not you're a good person. It's, did you decide to not believe in Jesus? That's a difficult conversation, isn't it? Okay, so I did like the story, whether it's true or not. Oh yeah, so there's a book. If you're curious, it's called Prophecies of Pale Skin. The guy wrote it. My friend wrote it. Get it on Amazon or whatever. But if you're curious about that, the meeting of the tribe, like that, it's an awesome story. And I think he's writing another one, already has wrote another one, because he's still out there. He's still with the tribe, and they are meeting other tribes. It's really cool. Like the whole tribe. Well, I don't want to give away. There's a lot going on, and it's really cool. And so the people are awesome. So, Prophecies of Pale Skin, if you want to read the book that he wrote on it. But like I said, I wasn't there, but I know the guy. Uh, I trust him, and like you can interview the people in the tribe if you want. If you were that committed, you could go and talk with the people there. They'd be able to confirm it because they're still there. Falamder says, "I don't want to avoid not being with God. I want to be with God." Okay, well, the answer then is believe in the one that He sent, so that we can be with God. Which maybe you already have. Like maybe you're just picking up on part of the conversation I've missed. That's your take on hell. You don't seeing hell as a punishment. It's the consequence. So there's a whole long conversation we could have on hell, and a lot of Christians have absolutely no idea what the Bible says about hell. It is the consequence if you don't want to be with God. That is the human side of things. But hell was never designed for humans. Many Christians don't know this. Many people don't know this. Hell was never designed for humans. Hell was designed for Satan, not for him to rule. People have like this contemporary idea that Satan is like the king of hell, and you know he's ruling there and fighting this war, you know, whatever it might be. No, not at all. Hell's designed for punishment for Satan for all the things he's done. First of all, the rebellion against God, bringing what we believe to be a third of all the angels with him. Hell is meant to be a punishment to him because he had full knowledge of who God was and made the choice of doing that. You know, we humans, we don't have full knowledge. The problem is when we decide we don't want to be with God, there is nowhere else to go, because that's the one place. The main aspect of hell, you know, people think of the fire and the brimstone, and that's true. That's in the Bible. That's not the main consequence of hell. The main consequence of hell is the absence of God. It's the one place where God, omnipresent God, is not present, and that's in hell. And and you're like, well, that's great. I don't like God. I don't believe in God. Well, the thing is, God is the source of love and hope, purpose, fellowship, all of the things that people live for. God is ultimately the source of those things. We experience a reflection of those things because of his grace. He says, I want humanity to at least have a reflection, an idea of what I'm like. And so he allows us to experience these things. In heaven, we'll experience the full version of those things. The unmitigated, uncorrupted version of love, for example. That's what heaven's going to be all about. Hell will be the opposite. Have absolutely none of those things. No hope, no purpose. And of course, it will have the it talks about the physical pain, but it's this eternal no source of any of those things that we were created for. And so that's what hell is. It's the absence of God. And so ultimately, when somebody's saying that I don't want to be with God, that is the only place to go. It's a consequence. We don't like the idea of it being a punishment, but it wasn't meant to be a punishment for us. That's why he sent his son to avoid us having to go there. He doesn't want us to go there. It's the only place we can go when we say no. When we say no to his son, there's nowhere else for us to go if we don't want to be there with him. I hope that's not too heavy-handed. Dutchy says, I don't want to be in a heaven, but also don't want to be in a hell. I just want to live freely. Why not create a place for people in between? So, it's the reality is, if let's just run with the scenario. Let's just say for a second. The scenario being, God is real, and the Bible's true, right? And all the things it says about God is true, right? So let's just take that as a given for the moment. Obviously, many people are going to disagree. That's okay. Let's just, for the sake of argument. So, for the sake of argument, we say that. Well, if that's the case, there can't really be any middle ground, because we're created to have fellowship with God. We're created, if you are familiar with the Bible's account of the Garden of Eden, we're created to be with God, to enjoy his presence, for him to enjoy us, to be family in that sense, to have this this belonging, this purpose, this place to be together. The reason why we have the world today is because man basically said, you know what, I don't want that. I want to be my own God. I want to do my own thing. And then choosing, and consciously choosing, Eve was deceived, Adam consciously chose to reject God's command and say, I'm going to do my own thing. I will be like God. And so there's only one or the other. You can either be somebody who is wanting to be with God, because that's our created purpose, or somebody who does not want to be with God. We convince ourselves that there's a neutral ground because, you know, maybe as an atheist or at least an agnostic, something like that. We convince ourselves that there can be a neutral ground by just saying, well, I don't think any of it exists. But again, in our scenario where we're saying, okay, we're believing what it says, this is the reason for the teaching, is that there really is no gray area. It's a yes or no. And that's the reason why Christians are so many aren't, but Christians are so adamant on trying to tell people about this, is because there really is only one thing. You can't be neutral if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe what Jesus' offer of salvation. Then there's only one place for you to go, and Christians don't want that for you. I don't want that for you. And so I want you to think about it. I want you to at least consider the ramifications, the pros and cons, all of the different aspects, because this is not something I want for anyone. That's why Christians try to tell others. They don't want them going there. That's exactly what God sent Jesus for. He doesn't want anyone going there. But it's the only place you can go if you don't want to be with Him. And I know what you're saying. Like, you're not making a conscious choice of I don't want to be with God because you're like, maybe I just don't believe in Him or whatever. But again, the idea that there can be this middle ground of, well, I don't think He's really there, I think there can be a neutral, that is essentially the same sort of lie that in the Garden of Eden people were deceived with, that you can have a third option, right? That you can make your own decisions, you can be like God, you can be the one to call the shots. So essentially that's what mankind's been looking for all this time, and it just doesn't exist. To be able to have the ability to call your own shots, which is essentially saying, I want to be in God's chair. I hope that makes sense. Again, trying to multitask, my primary focus is on the conversation, but this isn't the easiest of things. So if it isn't clear, just let me know, and I will absolutely continue. Why create man in the first place? Well, you'd have to ask God. God doesn't. Here's a big misconception. God doesn't. He's not lonely. He doesn't need man. There's a couple things that it does tell us about. Let's go back to vegetables. Sometimes we think that God needs the attention, the companionship, whatever it is, that He needed man. It's not. He created us for His own glory, for us to be able to see who He is and to experience His love. Essentially, I can ask a similar question that we might be able to relate to. Why do parents have kids? Okay, if we throw aside this whole idea of populating the planet, we've got plenty right now, and there's plenty of people who don't. There's just outright plenty of people who don't. I have family who has made that conscious choice not having kids. But let's just put that aside. The parents who do have kids, why do they have kids? Why have a family? You're doing just fine. Sometimes they have kids because it wasn't planned. Let's put all that aside. The people who say, I want a family, they do so not because they need that. Now, sometimes they do need the companionship, but let's just again, but all that, the primary reason is going to be they want to have that fellowship. They want to have that relationship, the love. And that's essentially the same feeling that God has put into our hearts, that He has. He wants to be able to share His love with others. Take care of you and your old to work the farm or something, right? I was joking with the family earlier, because I remember back in my day when we would have the older TVs that you couldn't either you lost a remote, which we still do today, or there wasn't a remote yet. Of course, the kids are the ones who get up and change the channel, so that's why you have kids, to change the channel. But no, like really, he wants. It's not that he needs to be loved. He wants to love on us. He wants to allow us to experience him. And then we get into all our problems because we say, no, I want to be God myself. I want to worship myself. I want to follow what I want to do. I want to be my own boss. It's not some character flaw or anything like that on God's part. It's our character flaws not being able to understand who he is and why he does such something. We can't understand a truly selfless motive because we are not truly selfless, right? Like he is capable of doing something 100% selflessly, and we are not.